I want to dedicate this reading to the over 400,000 people who have lost their lives to COVID-19, and those numbers are rising even as I speak. And I also want to dedicate it to Cicely Tyson, fabulous African American artist, actress, humanitarian. She will surely be missed. Um, I also want to acknowledge the work of my co-editors, Vita James and Ifiona Fulani, who could not be with us this evening. But I am thankful for their efforts in pulling together the About Place Journal um, that we did. I also want to acknowledge Michael McDermott, who's the managing editor of About Place Journal, Jesse Hughes, webmaster extraordinaire, uh, and Jacob, who's helping us navigate this Zoom universe. Um, and I want to say up front, this session is being recorded. If you haven't muted your mics, please do so. Um, we're going to try to do this session from speaker view so that we can have each person can have their time on the screen. Um, I will say that I will not be giving bios. You can go to the About Place Journal site and read people's bios and some of the work on the way. Um, and I think that's all I got today. I would like to start the reading by asking Ruth Ann Dandria to start us off.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and I'm reading the closing scene from a short story called Jonna the Baptist. In the story, the protagonist, an 8-year-old girl, has just learned in catechism class that in an emergency, anyone who has reached the age of reason, which she has also learned is 7, is permitted to perform a baptism. And she has decided that her priest, who doesn't like to get his hands dirty, will never get around to baptizing the things she thinks are blessed. And she's been running through the woods, baptizing rocks and trees and flowers. And she got caught, and she got tattled on, and she got in trouble and sent back to catechism class, where she learned what happened to John the Baptist. Distraught over this knowledge, she has just chopped off not her head, but all of her hair. With difficulty, her mother found her voice, said quietly, her palm cupping the back of her daughter's shorn skull, "I like it like this. Do you?" Jonna peered from mirror to mother, her own eyes blurred in response, smiled then, said yes, meant it too. For the first time since Sister killed John the Baptist, Jonna believed something good. "You know," said her mother, doing something no one ever did anymore, pulling her daughter into her lap, sitting with her there on the bedroom floor, putting her head close to Jonna's so she too appeared in the picture the mirror made. "I've been thinking about cutting my hair. It's so hot in the summertime." Jonna's whole body stiffened. "Won't Daddy be mad?" was all she could manage. "Oh, I don't know," her mother's voice meandered, seemed to have no clear direction, as if this were a land she'd never visited. "I suppose he might not like it at first, but I know he loves me and you, and so I think he will get used to it, to us." Jonna relaxed. "What do you think?" her mother urged. "Want to come with me?" Yes. It was the second time that day, that hour, that Jonna found an affirmative. It felt good. It felt even better when she and her mother walked out of Marge's beauty salon on Baylor Road, holding hands and sporting their new short hairdos. Her mother's, a bouncy bob that swayed when she walked, tickling her neck and making her look, Jonna said, like a happy horse. And Jonna's, a pixie cut, trimmed up and shaped a bit, her mother convinced her, by Marge. Her mother said it made her look like a fairy, that all she needed was a wand and she could work all the magic she wanted. That if she didn't watch out, Her mother rubbed her hand over Jana's shoulders, down her back, feeling she might even grow wings. Jana knew her mother was right, could almost feel the wing buds burgeoning between her ribs. They walked lightly on the earth toward home. When Jana's mother turned from the sidewalk to the trail along the creek bed into the place the big kids called Blackberry Jungle, Jana was surprised but pleased. They plucked ripe berries and stained their lips and palms with eating them. When Jana's mother finally turned to return to the cut lawns and trimmed hedges and concrete sidewalks, Jana thought for a moment she saw bulges in her mother's blouse where wings would go. Did you? Jana asked. Just that. But her mother knew. I used to, she explained, but I didn't use them enough, and they withered away. She grabbed her daughter then by both arms, crouched before her at the end of the pathway, right at the place where the wild went tame. Don't let that happen to you. It wasn't a plea. It was an admonishment. Her tone strong, not sweet, her hands and eyes urgent. I won't. Jana said it quickly to quiet her mother's voice crack, to ease her fear grip, but she meant it. The next morning, Jana tried spigot and wandered off toward the flower garden. When she was certain no one was watching, though, she turned and traced the way back to Blackberry Jungle. She blessed every bit of earth and growth and flower in the place, baptized them all in the name of the Mother, the Son, and the Holy, Holy Ghost, the one she saw flitting above her mother's shiny, short brown hair yesterday, the one she felt sitting like a crown on a happy head. Thank you.
Jacqueline, you were muted, but we couldn't hear you.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get that. Could you
You know
say
what?
again?
Oh, yeah.
Ruth, very much appreciated. We'd like to bring up Rachel Parker. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Mhm.
So I'm going to read a few poems. Me and him, we're together. He is there in a bubble, in my mind's left corner. Can he see me? Does he know I see him? The time his knee hurts, he rubs with large knuckled fingers. Does he know that my bones know his bones, the marrow jellied? That together we remember the gazelle, remember the tobacco fields, that together we remember grandma and always having sweet potatoes in our pockets. My mouth speaks and his ear perks. He thinks it's a fly and swats the remembering away. Sometimes he's close in the bubble, his grandchildren at his side, face, nose, and lips pushed through, stretching the circle, unable to break the membrane, the cord, the thread that stitches through, a bracelet dangling charms, all our lives sewn together, blood left on the knot, pulled tight, cut with teeth. And that was my contribution to aboutplace.com, aboutplacejournal.com. I was very happy to see that it was considered like resilience. So I appreciate that from the editors. Jackie. Dancing on beat. Having rhythm is the only way to remember where home is. The pounding of wildebeest, the clacking of calabash for a stew cooked in a cauldron on open flame. Without the beat of my mother's land, I would forget. I would wither and lay piled high in a heap of skin, bones bent under the weight of what I've come to do, calves stretched and knotted with grief and sorrow. The rumble of the coast, lit by red gold, calls in the twilight of morn. The tight-skinned Dembe responds, a wave and my toes, moving in the midst of Angola seeds, leaves between my teeth. I'm in a hull ready to sprout again. And my last piece, thank you again for having me. In the twilight of dusk, a mother braids 3 daughters' hair and rubber bands the ends. Their shoulders bronzed and shimmered from the sun reflect the beams of lightning bugs. A stone stoop holds them and some leaves from the maple. They have collected dandelions all day and bouqueted the wilted stems. There are great knee-high bottles, tops full of scraped tar for a Skelsey game. Turnip greens and fatback scent the air and make the crickets' stomachs growl. One of Miss Harvey's dogs is at their feet. The other nuzzles Mama's full belly. The moon smiles, shaking a cloud loose of stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Fine reading. All right, up next we have Mary Hill's Cuck.
The first poem I'm reading is Young Plum Tree, Part 1. The month of March collapses into a single yawning day, the hours drifting into each other like dawn into dusk. Who can remember when we first learned the ailing world would seep under our doors into our bodies? We stay at home, walk in woods, neighbors nod, a beaver thrills, a springtime swan sails without a mate. I dress in black beneath my stay-at-home clothes. The numbers rise, hundreds of thousands sick, tens of thousands dead. How long? Part 2. April. Time contracts, settles. Hours tumble into routine. I am making masks. In my left eye, you will see blood, and my smile now can't conceal my tears. Silent, masked, we glide down arrowed aisles. Vacant spaces lie between us. The numbers rise. How long? Weeks or months? The fickle season teases us with balmy sun. Part 3. Then snows the greening garden, withers us with wind. Yet just outside our window, jonquils presage softer days. Chartreuse and rosy tree tips promise leaves. Our young plum tree sprouts hope in delicate ivory blooms. The next poem has a quotation at the beginning in German, and it means the same thing as the title. Man kann das Land nur mit gebrochenem Herzen lieben. By Franz Walter Steinmeier, President of Germany, 2020, at a remembrance at the end of World War II. And the translation, to love my country with a broken heart. There are so many ways to love my land. I loved it with my hand upon my heart when bands played Bless America to start our homecomings, and we all had to stand. I loved it driving through the hills and trees, across the plains of tasseling corn, the sun. I loved the cities with their endless hum and where our peoples seem to mix with ease. But time has compromised my youthful will. The sacrifices, crimes, and flagrant greed that undermine our country's first ideals have caused our people needlessly to bleed. And so my broken heart leads me to kneel, to love my land, even while I grieve. And the last poem, more cheerful. entitled A Poem. See the supermoon tonight, it beams so brightly, brings me out of sleep to lift the window blind and see the rocks and sprouting flowers doused in light. Tufts of clouds the wind has pulled apart have blown across the dazzling brilliance of that radiant moon to no avail. It shines right through, causing leafless branches to trace their fragile patterns on the dusty pale blue puffs. I wonder if this silver washing over me and on my chair is at last a longed for blessing that I cannot comprehend. I'll sit and let it gleam, hoping delicate slivers will remain until the morning so that I will still remember this poem.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Next up, Susanna Prava Perez.
Thank you, Jackie. It's a privilege to be here. I have 3 short poems to share today. The first 2 come from the journal. The first is dedicated to the late Dr. Lorna Brin, who was the New York City emergency room physician who took her life in April when the first wave was hitting New York so hard. And people were just learning how to deal with this terrible pandemic. It's called The Cobbler Has No Shoes. How does it feel to blaze unmapped trails in bare feet, just a stethoscope as compass? How do you bear the weight of being the final say, life or death in the balance, praying you get it right? Hands you cannot hold, grasp at life, fierce coughs, fevered delirium, no way to turn off the volume, placing breathing tubes in the morning, toe tags at night. Some nightmares don't dispel at dawn. What thought screamed before scalpel sliced skin with precision gleaned from years of cutting out a body's ills? What final thought before crimson flowed across white sheets? Who was there to hold and heal the healer? Who placed the toe tag on the doctor's unshod feet? This next piece is titled Sparks. Where the poet teaches me how to catch fireflies, those glimmering sparks that flicker in my mind. He tells me, pull over when a muse trails you in the fast lane. No way you want to mess with a muse. But there's no soft shoulder to pull over on San Leandro Boulevard, just a high curb holding a river of weeds, graffiti, and makeshift shelters multiplying faster than the thistles and thorns. There's nothing soft about my route through East Oakland. I park in the employee lot and cross the street, dodging red light runners and rats that leap like pole vaulters into air vents. I'm late for work, but a muse caught a ride in my tailpipe, held me in her silky hands, pinned my eyelids open wide. My gaze traces the corrugated bark of a palm tree towering above the Fruitvale BART. Not 50 feet away, Oscar Grant got shot, dead, by a cop who said he'd confused right from left, but really confused right from wrong as he pulled his gun on a handcuffed man face down on the platform. I'm late for work. But palm frond shadows dance on the pavestones, and women who walked all the way from Guatemala rest in the shade wearing hand-woven huipilos and high-heeled shoes from Payless. Girls with black braids skip round the fountain, clap hands in blue water, giggle their delight. I scribble snapshots in my calendar in the leftover corners of days. I might as well be the palm tree, the fountain, the aroma of coffee in the plaza. I'm late for work. but the sun spells summer on my shoulders. Brother Poet's voice is in my ears, and there are fireflies everywhere I look. I'm going to close with another Oakland poem. Oakland is where I live and work as a physician assistant in a community clinic. And this poem is titled Blessed, or Why I Love My Child. On the steps of Oakland's Iglesia Santa Isabel, a woman stopped me with, Doctora, said reverently, as if she'd uttered Padre to the white-robed priests within the church's walls, face illuminated like rose and yellow light streaming through stained glass. A girl, maybe 7, was at her side. She presented me to the pigtailed child, Spanish lilting like a corrido, as she recounted the months I'd laid hands on her growing belly, like a soothsayer cupping a crystal ball. The child looked at me, deciphering the mystery, cascades of gratitude flowing from her mother's mouth, splashing blessings as she cradled the child's crown. Thank you.
Thank you for these 3 fine poems, Susanna. Sorry. All right, up next we have Zoe Brigley.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm so glad to be here. I admire so much everything that About Place does and the Black Earth Institute as well. So I'm really delighted to be reading. I'm just going to put into the chat a link to my essay in case anybody's got accessibility needs and you can just read along. I won't explain it. I'm just going to read 5 minutes from the essay, so I skip a few bits, but it's called Daphne Becoming. So imagine this. I am 16 or 17 years old and I've been seeing an older man for over a year. A man who is often abusive and coercive. I'm walking away one evening from the house where he lives on a suburban street and I am stiff and sore. I know I am trapped because though I want to leave him, he has made me feel that he is the only man, the only person who will ever love me. I still hope that if I can make him love me enough, one day he might stop. When I'm being hurt, I think of myself as becoming wood, becoming a tree. I'm not the first woman to feel this way. This was confirmed for me when I read in Alice Walker's defiant novel, The Color Purple, how the women there too described their reaction on suffering pain as turning to wood. It is no coincidence either that all those women pursued in Ovid turn into trees, reeds, or plants. In the myths, it is a kind of escape. Chased by Apollo, Daphne finds herself trapped, and her transformation is tinged with horror. Her feet benumbed and fastened to the ground, she grows a filmy and protective rind as her arms turn to branches. Ovid is not a totally sympathetic narrator. He tells us salaciously that Daphne cannot hide the smoothness of her skin and describes Apollo kissing it. She is only half transformed. Becoming wood is a frail defense for a person being harmed. Becoming a tree is not a true escape then, because even while the transformation to a laurel makes Daphne strange and non-human, she's still vulnerable to attack. I pass through an alley and come out onto a wide green lawn. I stop under a tree and across the grass is the shape of turrets, the castle that crowns the navel of the town where I grew up. I'm standing under an oak tree, pulling my denim jacket closed around me because a breeze has started blowing from the west. The canopy of the oak is alive with leaves blinking and trembling. Would you believe me if I told you that every tree sings a particular song when the wind blows through it? That day the oak is singing, but not to me especially. We enjoy humanizing nature, framing it as a friend or family. Maybe it began in the 19th century with Darwin, who described the behaviors of animals and insects in peculiarly human terms. Writing for The Guardian about how nature healed her alcohol addiction, Lucy Jones uses a maternal image of nursing, I rested in nature's care for a while. But nature is not our mother, is not human even, and it is not there simply to be used by us as some kind of alternative therapy or rehab. Nature doesn't even exist as a separate entity from human beings. And no, the oak tree that day is not singing for me or to me. But despite that, I'm moved by it, and the wind moves sensuously through my hair, over my lips and cheeks, just as it moves the slender branches and murmuring leaves. Is this an answer to trauma, the living ecologies around us? And if they do heal us, is it not because they resemble human care, but precisely because they couldn't care less about us? Couldn't it be that we are removed from trauma by what is strange and eerie about nature, by how removed it is from constraints, from sanitized human environments, from the perverse dysfunctions of the human world where men abuse and kill women with sad regularity? I've gone back to this moment again and again. Just a 16-year-old girl standing under an oak tree, clutching her jacket around her. It wouldn't look like much to an observer, and I've struggled to understand its significance myself, but I know how important it was as one of a series of moments that led me at last to break away from my abuser to the day when I set myself free. And now we find ourselves in a moment on the edge of catastrophe because white Western politicians mirror my abuser. Either they fail to empathize with people, creatures, and things, or they actually take pleasure in destroying them. It is up to us to feel the shuddering world, to protect it, because the trees are caught in their roots and bark, caught like Daphne in her laurel form, caught by the whims of privileged men. It is possible for us to set ourselves free.
What a sharing essay. You want to read the rest of it. We couldn't pull ourselves away from it when we saw it. Thank you, Zoe. And you got a fabulous background. I love it. Up next, we have Lucy Bowling reading for Doug Bowling.
Wind lifts off the sea.
Lucy, you got to speak up.
Okay. Am I better now?
Go for it.
Okay. Wind lifts off the sea and touches the land and the startled faces there, and the shifting sand of the quivering dunes. A mother touches the small face of her newborn, and her love is the first chapter of many more to follow. Children reach out and explore vastness through them, and their busy fingers touch sunlight and shadow. The softness of a pet's fur, how shapes become words of themselves. And what became the land of free and brave, indigenous people and slaves freed or not have known the touch of flame and noose. Even as words of piety fade into hate and venom, whole neighborhoods razed by the torch, mothers' cries for their lost ones unwritten on the careful books of history. The bullets spit their fire into the backs of unwanted and knees pressed with force against unprotected necks. Until all breath is gone, so many. Hope and despair and anger seethe in such a world, and what is to be done? Now the steps of marchers touch the blood-bruised streets, and words shake free of old evasions enshrined in statuarity. And a flag too long lofted above the intent believers. Now is the time, we say, now is the time, now.
Lucy, thank you for your brave reading of your grandfather's wonderful work. Thank you. We'd like to, hi Doug, we'd like to pick up the next reader, Pamela Stone Singer.
Hi, everybody. I've been honored to have my 2 poems published in About Journal. And I'm going to read, and my first poem is called Warriors. 1, Keith. Eyes flutter. Oh, I just want to say this is about a close friend who battled with cancer and died this past fall. Warriors. Keith. Eyes flutter, labored breath, arms lift, quiver in air, asking angels to take him. Blackbird taps on the window. Vivid memories of ancestors, people in hulls of ships, cries, vomit, urine, sweat, emptied bowels. On land, sold like meat, bought, given away, whipped, torn apart, bloody backs like roads, broken bones, ripped sinews and muscles. It was hard, get beatings half fed. The times I hated most was picking cotton when the frost was on the bolls. My hands get cracked and bleed. That's written by Mary Reynolds, Slave Narrative from the Federal Writers Project, 1936 to 1938. Memories of lynchings, acting suspicious around whites, looking at white women, too loud in public, no regular jobs, groups of people lynched, or 1 or 2 at a time, crowds of people watched, warriors. Tamariah Robinson, 25, handcuffed, dragged downstairs, dead. Tamir Rice, 12, holding toy gun, shot in head, dead. Tanisha Anderson, 37, body slammed on pavement, dead. Freddie Gray, dragged into police stand, restrained, spinal injury, dead. Stephen Clark, 20, shot in grandmother's yard, dead. Sandra Bland, hung in jail cell, dead. Philando Castile, 32, murdered in car, dead. Oops, sorry. Breonna Taylor, 26, asleep in bed, dead. Eric Garner, 43, chokehold, dead. George Floyd, 46, chokehold, dead. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Wait a second. Flight. Thunder, lightning, rain, storms greet great ones as they die. Blackbird taps on window. Say their names, say their names. Keith flies. So can I do one more? One more?
Yes, go
Okay.
for it.
All right. This is called Alina Candelaria. And this is a lighter one. I thought it was an incantation, her name, the way she said it in the sing-song voice of a proud 5-year-old, Alina Ramon Diaz Amorosa Candelaria, or a jingle, the way her lips pursed perfectly in a subtle smile, vowels accentuated. She waits in the salon while mother gets her hair cut, shows me her leopard print vinyl coat with bubblegum pink polyester lining, crosses her ankles, feet in ballet slippers, hair a cape down her back, quizzical brown eyes. Elena Ramon Diaz Amorosa Candelaria. Elena tells me her brother Hector is in 4th grade and he's 16. Her father Ernesto is 16 too. Elena says they are very old. She tells me a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Alina. Her mother, Sylvia, is having her hair cut, so Alina has to wait in the salon. Her mother cooks, her father builds fences, her brother eats pizza and tacos. I asked her to draw a picture. Square lines create a house. Windows radiate light. Stick figures of Alina and mother waiting. Father with hammer and nails. Figure of Hector eating a taco. But the house is sinking. Glass on the ground. Broken door. Tacos are burning. Stick figures disappear. Will Alina know about the deep rivers and that her mother had to learn to swim right then and there, clothes on her back like skin, father in detention camp on floor, cold as fear, Alina Ramon Diaz Amoroso Candelaria.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Up next, we have Pamela Booker.
Thank you, Jackie. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm excited to really be able to share this time with all of the readers this evening. I'll be reading an excerpt from my essay, Where's Your Tree? Eco-Mediations and Memories of Dirt. And I am dedicating this reading to my mother, Jenny McCoy Booker, and to her father, William McCoy, of whom this excerpt is partly inspired by. Much of my work is to reclaim the sustainable applications that our ancestors practiced lifetimes before this country's founding, and to remember they are accessible to us now. That we commit to honoring plant life with a particular focus on healing the land on which they flourish is as fortifying to me as privileging art in a world that's never been wholly convinced of my worth. So, how do we recover, resist, sustain, and then do it again? I commune with dirt. Sometimes the only way to cool down is to dig until I find the hidden reasons for strife. My creative impulses are driven by what is buried in the soot and dirt of this country's past, and loosened clumps of socially engaged sites spur new biodiverse growth, ethical restoration, and healing. My earliest memories of gardening are as a toddler in the company of my 6-foot tall grandfather, William McCoy Sr., whom I called Papa, weeding his flower beds and grapevines in his modest home lawn and backyard in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. In his younger years, he was known to both chase after and provide food to teenagers who stole his vegetables and his grapes. His flowers were exquisite, a rambling assortment of rose species, hydrangeas, gladiolas, and others I could never even name. But Pop-Up's flora were the envy and pride of the neighborhood. And for my worldview, he cultivated them with the same care, devotion, and safeguarding that he provided his family. Thank you. Descendants of teachers, preachers, sharecroppers, and the enslaved, my grandfather's family line are North Carolina rooted in Fayetteville, Raleigh, Durham, and my cherished grandmother, Mamie McQueen, who passed when I was very young, was raised in Bennettsville, South Carolina. When my grandparents were a fledgling married couple, they worked in a tobacco factory for Philip Morris to save enough money to eventually allow them to migrate up north, as he used to quip. Freedom fighters, certainly those from my grandfather's era and his antecedents, understood that to enslave or oppress any part of a living system ultimately betrays all of nature. Whether plantation captive or runaway or today's exploited factory worker. They studied the complex offerings of forests that hid and protected them, the plants that nourished them and supplied balms for wounds and fevers, dandelion, marshmallow roots, boneset, woolly lamb's ear, all effective healing palliatives. In his later years, Pop-Pop's hands and knees grew gnarly from gout, a crippling form of arthritis. Those leafy greens may finally have caught up with him. More likely, his condition resulted from standing up for more than 10 hours a day at labor intensive jobs since childhood. To relieve his pain, he applied those smelly topical menthol rubs to his aching limbs and wintergreen scented alcohol. The astringent smells flooded his house, sending my litter of cousins and me into boisterous acts of clutching our noses, fake coughing, and flailing our arms behind his back. During summers, we gladly haul back large mason jars of salty ocean water from family visits to Atlantic City and Cape May beaches for his restorative bath soaks. Now, despite our plausible alarm, the truth is our beloveds would not have deliberated on the impact of climate change with our modern day scientific certainty or anxiety. What they summoned was justice. In the interdependent actions of benevolence and relief, such as I gleaned from my grandfather's legendary bathing rituals. In past centuries, drinking water from fresh streams, taking deep breaths of unsullied air, and chomping on freedom's sweetness, and a handful of mulberries or wild grapes propagated with pesticides was to draw sustenance from comparatively unspoiled, clean foods that carried them to the next meal. Ecosystems, habitats, and movements are only as healthy as the people who inhabit them. When he relocated the family to Philadelphia in the mid 1940s, Pop was hired for a rare position for Black male workers of his time as a union longshoreman. To his dismay, he encountered a differently configured practice of policing his body and dreams. While on the job, these systemic practices found him still fighting to gain a fair wage or questioning why he and other Black workers were given less consideration than white workers. He was still fighting, and toiling the soil probably saved my grandfather's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for persisting, Pamela. My favorite line, they summon justice. All right. All right. Moving along. Our next reader is Susan Rich.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. And somehow the fact that people are trying to stop us makes acts of resistance seem like we're doing it right now. So I'm glad we're all still here. I'm going to read a couple of poems, maybe 3 short ones, 2 from the journal. And I'll just say I'm coming to you from Seattle, Washington, where it is not too cold tonight. I feel kind of guilty saying that, but I'll just say Seattle's a funny city. I'm not from here, where almost wherever you are, you're near water or you're near mountains. So funny in a good way. This first one, and what I'm doing during the pandemic is spending a lot of time outside walking, as probably most of us are. What I read in the rising tides, with a line by Rainer Maria Rilke. Most nights as I walk the shore, I gaze at the festival of gulls and beautiful girls, all with wings and places to go. My mind moves like a cloudscape over striped flashes of blood orange and beach rose. I read the texts of the tide line, the iridescent stones and seaweed, driftwood and silt. Against so strong a current, you cannot advance. And yet we do. And some days I watch a caftanned woman playing trumpet to the outgoing waters. Some nights I meet a man undigging his coffin in the sand. Lovers and tough mothers, newborns with fathers who coo in Creole. We nod briefly. Our pockets fill with dark chocolate kisses and coins too few for the seaside bar. What compels us from our houses, even during a pandemic, to smoke and swim and skate? I look out in new bewilderment with all the others, watching our bright failures, our sea-lit joys. Next is a poem called In the Museum of Scent and Sense, and it mentions two names. It says Naomi, and that's Naomi Shihab Nye, and Terrence Hayes, so that you know what the heck I'm talking about. Naomi writes of being famous to the buttonhole. I wonder if what she means is fully known. I want to be known by the cabinet of your being, its zenith of laughter and its burdens that flutter towards me. Terrence writes that making love to yourself matters more than what you learn when loving someone else. But I'm not sure he's right. I prefer the nugget of otherness, the scuff of your thought, the simple anatomy of two lyric selves. What would Rilke say about lovers in a pandemic, alone, from his borrowed castle, pacing the halls after midnight, muddling the cook's dreams? Unable to sleep or pray, there is nothing left for us but to bring our refuged bodies together. Not a departure from the day exactly, just a distilled thimble of pleasure, of scent, like the ancient colognes in Musée de Parfum in Paris, alive and animated within us, still waiting, still wanting. The last poem is very short. It's called What I Learned from Bewitched, and I'm hoping people here are old enough to remember the television show Bewitched with Sam was the star, and I think the rest you'll get, but she was trying to be a regular human and she really wasn't. What I learned from Bewitched. A girl could have a boy's name and still be beautiful. Some exchanges between husband and wife would be boring, all pot roast and brisket. Yet a twitch of the nose and clean dishes could appear like a universe rewilding. But what good was traditional magic if Sam stayed with what's his name? How could anyone love a man, the opposite of handsome, only begrudgingly kind? What if the network had written in a new lover? If together the two women had cleansed the neighborhood of bigotry, of crime? I studied Bewitched as my mother bleached the kitchen sink, let down hems from hand-me-down coats. I studied alchemy, parsed out which broomstick to choose. Abracadabra survival, abracadabra something, something new. Thank you.
Thank you. Such sensual and fun work. I would like to bring up the next reader, Angela Lockhart Aronoff, one of my good Brooklyn buddies.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Hey, Michelle. I'm just so ecstatic to be to have 3 of my poems published with the Black Earth Institute and About Place Journal, and tonight I'm going to read 2 of them. This is called Whispers. Listen here to what we be telling you now. All these oceans and seas be rising up. Old winds be flying back over the passage, hauling all that spirit, dust of the restless. May we ancestors circle be unbroken. With what was passed down to you, born in you, we work the mojo, the spirit for you. So listen good now, while you keep inside. May we ancestors circle be unbroken. It's time to rid yourself of that hiding mask, listening to that whispering wind of fear up in the backyard, listening to that sea drifting, haint, looking for trash to eat. When that something unseen whispers your name, don't breathe a word, don't open your mouth. A past was born in you, passed down to you. We worked the mojo, the spirit for you. The columns have fallen. This here's a new time, a new direction. In this season of rage, may we ancestors circle, be unbroken. Earth Mother, have mercy. Here come the rain. The next poem is called Yellow Boots, Zuhitsu. Fall, 2019, 5:45 a.m. Woke up too late to journal this morning. Outside the kitchen window, a yellow sun rising into a day, clean. As I listen to the Zuhitsu movement of wind, all up inside my head, Harry Belafonte singing, daylight coming and I wanna go home. 6:11 a.m. My morning grown woman warrior routine begins. I shower off the night sweats with Rachel Maddow on the iPad propped up behind the bathroom faucet as I apply my age-appropriate war paint over the sink. 7:20 a.m. I lock my black painted apartment door, turn around and notice a pair of little canary yellow rain boots outside apartment number 2B. Little plastic yellow boots laying on their side, abandoned there for weeks. I head on down the marble 1920s post-war staircase. Past each black painted apartment door is a story, 5 stories per floor. Some stories I know, most I don't. As I turn to continue down the 3rd and 2nd flights, landing on the 1st floor, stepping out the front door, skipping down the 3-step stoop that faces the dark tree-lined park. All my dad ever wanted to see was the northern fall colors of dying green, red and yellow leaves. And as I descend into the 15th Street subway stop, headed uptown towards the next ground zero, I take note that my old dusty city boots need shining. And as old as I am, I still miss my mom and dad. Wearing this mask, wearing these plastic gloves, keeping the distance. Mama and Daddy saying, Angela, baby, when you coming home? Thank you.
Thank you. What a fine, fine reading. And you know you want to go to About Place Journal and read the 3rd poem. Anyhow, coming up next is Petra Kuppers, who so kindly passed me the baton to keep the About Place Journal reading series going. Interesting as it has been. Petra Kuppers.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody. And thank you, Jacqueline. I'm just going to see what's up here. Okay, for some reason. Oh, now I can see myself here. Thank you so much. I'm just so delighted to be associated with About Place and the Black Earth Institute. Jacqueline, I'm so glad for all the work that you're putting into this reading series, and I'm just delighted to read with you all. I'm reading the poems, 2 of the poems that I published in About Place, and I just put the link up for those of us who like to follow along, because weird accent, so it's sometimes nice to be able to follow along. And I'm going to read the first poem, After the Whales. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, you might have been to the Embarcadero. And you might remember that you're in the city surrounded by all the concrete and glass and steel and chrome. And then you're walking down towards the waterfront. So I'd like you to take that walk with me now into this fantasy scene, After the Whales. She steps outside the bounds of the security camera. Gray stuccoed walls contract behind her. Glass arrows compress from the rotating doors. A leash of chrome lunges toward her, disappearing back. Too late. She's already over the street's hump. The bay winks at the bottom, fluke up to mauve sky. Her legs churn warm pavement. Bitumen remembers mammoth bones, liver collapse, reptile teeth marks glom red rubber soles. The street descends steeply. Creepers dart from shuttered shop windows. Night-flowering orchid bats jab into her nostrils. Green dog shit children fly buzzes her naked shin. Rusty spokes slalom. The embankment pools around her like a suede skirt. Beyond, ghost ships hulk in the channel. Thin oil layers salt water into sinus waves. Fish stink roils up her arms, lodges a translucent scale where her toes burst free. The sandal, so tender, membrane. She steps onto the harbor's mirror. Heel first, she slips into the bardo of salt. Depth rushes her hair follicles into contraction. Sound tugs forward. Mouth sucks her beyond the red bridge. White shadows cruise at the far edges of sight. Below bend last violet rays into crust, the black. Submarine bubbles streaks her with lumen lands. Sediment, soft, opens basement, doors to forgotten chambers. Eyeless choir keens into silicon heat. A judgment of gelatinous weave holds her tight. Her brain streams amino acids, pressure curves, horsetail branches purple. A diode sings beyond. They fall, all fall. Her spine now pulses, choir rears. Thank you. That was the first poem. All right. It's always really good fun to read. Going on a little journey together. The second poem is very different, and I just want to read it because it is such a very different poem. It's an erasure. So I love playing around with Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft's work, who was a racist, misogynist, terrible man who wrote terrible things, and yet so many of us, so many people interested in social justice and science fiction keep reading him and keep playing with H.P. Lovecraft, right? So this is what this is about. This is an exercise I do with my students. I give them one of the stories of H.P. Lovecraft, and we cut out words that we're interested in. We're doing erasure on him. We rearrange the granddaddy's words into something else. So this is what I'm sharing now. It's called End Waters. And you also see it on the same link. So, and you see there's all these interesting words that really feel nice in the mouth, which you won't always know what they mean, but like the Chelonai are turtles. That's the order of turtles. The Diomedeidae are albatrosses, the order of albatrosses. Because Lovecraft also uses a lot of sort of pseudo-scientific language as well. And I'm also mentioning Aotearoa. Aotearoa is the indigenous name for New Zealand. Dunedin is one of the places of Lovecraft's, this particular story. End Waters, a Lovecraftian erasure. Murderous sea, cuss. Tears flood the reef. Atolls bleach to skull rage. Archipelago enters interzone. Horned stag sanctuary, final extrusion. Microplastics ebb through coral debris. Chalk white, mob jelly. Luxury beach, your entourage stands by. Polaroid trash kraken. tumbles through tentacles till it adheres to inflamed encrustation, boat, wound, mola mola, 400-pound judder, netted millstone with eye blink stare, lime poison veins the water. Chilonai, unable to retract, she spins into the net, wrapped through the fin, shark blood, Dunedin, end of the Aotearoa map. Diomededia, the albatross's nest, scope range, along in the hut. Red, purple, green, blue intestines. The end came, rope across the seas, flay open stomachs, acids, gazer, documentum, the ocean's plastic lesson. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Wonderful reading. Thank you. I think our last reader is Akua Leslie Hope, coming all the way from Corning, New York, I believe.
I'm speaking to you from the ancestral land of the Onondaga, also known as the Seneca, keepers of the Western Door. I pay homage to the Seneca past, present, and future, and to my ancestors by whose grace I am sustained. I'm so delighted to be in this wonderful company, and I'm grateful to have had 3 poems included in the collection with these other fabulous creators. Thank you all so much. I'm going to read the one I was told to. I Envy You is the title of the poem. I envy you, for whom all of this is new. I envy you, who did not tremble at any unexpected call at any unusual hour, announcing your cousin's miscalculated overdose or brother's narc sweep imprisonment, a father's sudden hospitalization, facing proven fears that they won't be cured for. That skinny art guy with a marker beaten to death, that grandmother naked and afraid, shot in her apartment, a boy playing alone, killed in seconds, the kid walking home from the store, murdered, a fiance celebrating his impending nuptials, bullet riddled with friends in his car, the father waiting for his son to come home from school, executed while he backed up away. A wallet mistaken as a gun, as an immigrant mistaken for some other, stood in the doorway of his own home, had his unfulfilled promise Swiss cheesed by lead. The young woman playing video games with her nephew slain through her open window, the woman rescuer asleep at home, annihilated while she slept. All by domestic enforcers of our states of misbeing, those designated to maintain peace, secure order, destructive in their misguided executions of dubious duty, systemic thoughtlessness, misapprehensions protected by uniform and badge and privilege, and endless assumptions of others' guilt. Without second thought or even breath, I envy you who don't know this, who never knew this automatic cessation of futures, this swift and peculiar severance, impetuous eradications, pernicious annihilations, lives ended for minute infractions, imagined slights, no reason whatsoever, sometimes too often arbitrary, impulsive slaughter. Find this strange and shocking in its terribleness? I'm glad you find it inconceivably awful. I envy you, for whom this is news, for whom this is new, and perhaps you will demand it change.
Thank you, Akua. A fitting poem to close this fabulous reading. I want to just say thank you to all of the readers who took the time to be present with us. And I just want to make you aware that there will be a recording up probably in the next week. I also want to say that our next reading will be next Friday. That's the last reading, February 5th at 7 o'clock. I was looking at the chat all along and I didn't see questions, but I saw an endless list of compliments and praise. I will copy the chat and send it to all the readers. I just want to thank you all. We have prevailed against two interruptions, and we continue to resist and create. And love to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you so much.
Jacqueline.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
All right. So maybe I'll see you next Friday.
Till next Friday.